Da-da-da! What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes, get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never met me before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside, and I did a little bit of both today. It was my intent to actually go for a very long walk, but I did do a little bit of out and about and a few things that I needed to get done. If you guys haven't hung with me for any length of time, you know I'm pretty brutal when it comes to my keyboards. When I'm sitting here, I usually have a cup of coffee. And when I have a cup of coffee, look at my cup, right? I have a big cup of coffee. And quite often I get distracted and I'll tip my coffee over on my desk and it'll spill all over my keyboard. And right, I go through keyboards like I go through underwear sometimes. I always usually keep a spare, and I would have bought a spare today, but there was only one decent keyboard. I'm not even sure if it'll work. It's a Bluetooth one, right? Hopefully my computer is not too old. I'm getting a new one. I haven't gotten it yet, but the plan is to get one, but it's only in because this is Windows 10 and Windows 11 is out, and Windows 10 is being taking out, right? So I want to always keep my technology as up to date as I possibly can, right? Like I wear thrifted clothes. I furnish my house with thrifted. These are important. My groceries, I have to buy them new, right? Uh, but also in that technology, because I work in social media, it's important for me to keep that up to date. I'm doing this on my laptop. It was a little bit of an investment for me. I designed this laptop for myself for my needs that I thought I needed at a time. If I had it over to do it again, I would upgrade in the camera, also in the laptop, because I really do love doing my live shows with my laptop. I really do. Just because it streams really well. It's a powerful little laptop. Like I said, I designed it for myself because I wanted it for editing my videos. I'm not a big fan of editing, but if I'm going to do it, I need a little laptop that is going to take a little bit of a beating, because I tell you, I am pretty harsh. I have no idea how many times I rebooted this laptop, just right, just burning my or downloading my programs for my editing programs, right? I am slow. I'm not technically inclined, so I rely a little bit on the technology. So I buy these things new. The PC, well, for the PC, I don't need that power. I don't use it for editing. I don't use my PC for anything except to really take in the lessons, to sit in on conversations. Because I could do it on the laptop, but right, it's such a little small screen on it. I have this great big smart television. It's not a great big one. It's like a 32 inch or something. Uh, but it's just perfect for me. Um, but right, like I said, I don't need much, but I do need a desktop, right, along with my laptop. So we're working towards that. I really am. I think, even though I don't always use the technology, like I don't always use my microphone, I don't even use my wireless, barely, and I bought it specifically for my YouTube, but I find quite often that my voice carries okay in the lives, right? I don't have a lot of background noise, except for the fact that I live behind a fire station, but other than that, like I said, I am pretty good. I am giving back in a way that, right, I am doing thrifted. when I was a little kid, I had that name secondhander. Oh my goodness. I was so ashamed of it. I was so embarrassed. The kids found out my mother bought our clothes at the secondhand store, and I was tortured with that nickname in that school. Thank goodness, I sometimes look back at my childhood and go, oh my goodness, you went to all those. I went to 11 different elementary schools, right? I went to 11 different schools growing up. And it really truly did mess me up. But at the same time, it did save me in some points. And that one school where those kids tagged me with that nickname that hurt me so bad. And it was in those early years too, like grade 3, grade 4, right? So those ones when we're truly getting imprinted and impacted by the people that we're not surrounding ourselves with them, but because we're going to school, we're around them. We're surrounded by them anyway, and we are influenced, even if we believe that we're not, that we can be just our own people, or our parents dictating to us the people that we are, and to be able to live that way outside of the household. It's kind of sometimes hard. It really was. I had a hard time at home, and I had a hard time at school at the same time. Okay, so to bring it back to the main branch. Hi everybody. I have been a little bit, like I said, in the inside and the outside today. I went up, and this was the inside and the outside, to tell you the truth. I went out to the store. Like I said, I needed a new keyboard for my computer because I spilled the coffee and burnt it out, right? So I went up to the little thrift store that I used to work at, and to get a little cheap little keyboard, and walked into the store, and I couldn't help myself, right? It was right. I just wanted to go mush. I just wanted to clean and tidy things up, and it's my nature to notice things that are out of place, and that was my job. That was my home away from home. And if something's missing and out of place in my household, I'm going to notice it. Well, I felt that same way going into the store today. It was the first time I had been back into the store since I had quit that job, and it was a little bit uncomfortable. I was enjoying looking around, but in that interaction with old customers that I hadn't seen for a while, I found it a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit urgent in its right, that it just was awkward. It was awkward, and I don't know how long it will be before I go back there again. It was because I needed a keyboard, but it was interesting how that little bit of, and it wasn't nervousness, it wasn't even disappointment, because I thought maybe when I walked in the door that I would be a little bit sad, because that job did keep me grounded, and I thrived at it, and I was really good at it, beyond good. But when I walked into the store, it was disappointment, right? That it wasn't being held up, the way that, well, that it should have, that it deserves to be held up. We built up, that community there, and that community now has expectations because we kept the store a certain way. We served the clients a certain way, and we're going into the weekend. I'm not going into the weekend, but the store's going into the weekend, and this is the one day when it is meticulous. Everything is perfect and ready to go for the big money grab day. And I could barely find anything of interest in the store. Not to say that there wasn't, because, it's just my interest, but it, the disappointment in how unorganized and how untidy it was. It made me a little bit sad. And that was a feeling that I didn't expect, right? I thought maybe a little bit of disappointment, a little bit of sadness because, I missed my job, but I was sad because it wasn't being kept. It wasn't, right? So, a little bit of feeling bad, right? A little bit of feeling bad because it is a busy season and, it could have been a different story. But that's the thing, it's a different story, right? Each one of us get to make the choices in our life, and we have to be upholden to those choices. And of course, it made me reflect, right? Of course, because I wasn't feeling good, right? I was thought that the first time I go back there, I would be so happy and I'd be talking to everybody and excited to catch up on anything. And I just wanted to get my keyboard and get out of there, in all honesty. And I found it very, very curious. But it was also a signal that, right, it really, really is over. Just like that. It's just done. And I'm not sure if that place will have, well, I'm sure it'll have a place in the stories, right? I'm not a big person to dwell on memories, but if it lines up in a conversation where I can offer up an experience I had with one of my customers, or the experience in the job itself, or those relationships that I had built up in it. Of course, yes. But, it's a different story for me now going forward. And so that's just what I'm going to do. And like I said, right, who's to say if I'll ever go back to that store ever again? Right? There's lots of thrift stores in the city that I can visit, and that's a truth. So what we're going to do today is we're just going to pick a card. It's Friday. Today I spent the day a little bit with myself. Like I said, I wanted to get outside today and connect with the mother nature. I try to do it a little bit every single day, even if I'm just going to go for a walk for a couple of blocks, or just go to the store, right? I try to get outside every day. I didn't get outside. Did I get outside yesterday? Oh yeah, I got outside. Of course I got outdoor yesterday, but I forget, right? But it was interesting because when I came in to my content, when I came home tonight, I uh I bumped into something really interesting. And it's really neat how I can sit in on some of these conversations that, as a teenager, as a young adult, I would probably find pretty disinteresting. It's kind of stuff my dad loved, but for me, I did not find that interesting. I guess maybe being at that age, I was probably more interested in the boys than these heavy talks. And I did have those heavy talks with my father, those conversations, but only to the capacity of my age, right? In my teens. And but this one here is really interesting because it kind of runs in line with not just my beliefs, because they're not beliefs, they're scientific facts about telluric energy, which is the energy that the earth itself signals, right? And that's why people, they ground, they'll go walk in the grass in their bare feet, or they'll go hug a tree, or they'll go just lean back on a tree and just absorb, right? Or they'll talk to leaves. Quite often, I'll walk by plants and I will talk to the plants. And it's not, I didn't think that I'm having a conversation with the plants, but from what I'm understanding, it's quite possible that I was. But it was in that exchange of oxygen and nitrogen. And that was the relationship in me kind of breathing on the plants, right? And it's just a little bit of kindness, in that appreciation for Mother Nature. If you hung out with me for any length of time, you know I'm big on nature. But this gentleman here, Dr. Yogi Hendlin, he's not a yogi. He's a scientist or something. He was sitting here having a conversation. He's just sitting here with a guy, and they're just enjoying a couple of whiskeys, and they're talking about biosemiotics, and this is this energy, this connection with Mother Nature, this connection to animals and plants, and how we communicate with them. And we do communicate with them. Historically, it's just something that we've forgotten because of, I don't know, we don't need these traits anymore because we're not using them. We just naturally forget about them over the course of thousands of years or however long it took. But it's kind of like that idea. You hear those TikTok videos and those television shows like the dog whisperer and the horse whisperer. Well, it's just the way that we communicate to other beings. And yeah, they're talking about plants and trees as other beings, and I feel that connection. I go for a walk. Today I was kind of ashamed because when I got home, I said, Sydney, how many trees did you touch? Right? And I couldn't even think of one. Sometimes when I'm a little bit embarrassed because the trees are lining the boulevards and the people are out there doing their yards and stuff, and they see me hugging every tree all the way up the street, that sometimes what I kind of do is I'll just brush myself up against the fence of people's trees hanging over the fence and stuff. And sometimes I'll do that instead of being the what do you call it, the point of interest in my bit of tree hugging. But I did feel bad when I got home today because I remembered, I was out and about in a little bit, and I took a certain route, and I says, oh, and I'll take this route home so that I can connect with Mother Nature. And I also contemplated, should I do it on the way there or do it on the way back? And I said, oh, on the way back. And then on the way back, I can't even remember getting home. I was in such the move to get home, right? So right, it is what it is. But it's really wonderful to hear that this biosemiotics kind of runs in line with some of my understandings about telluric energy, and how it actually provides, and right, and how important it is for us to actually ground. I don't just ground in that job that put the roof over my head. I ground in that connection that I had to the trees and the grass and to the crystals. And isn't that, it's my smoky quartz, isn't it amazing? Yeah, love it. I dug that one out. Yeah, all my rocks. I'm trying to decide, what do I want to do with all my rocks. Do I just want to hold on to them till I get a garden? I did a couple of tinkle trays, so I put rocks and seashells and fossils and art glass and just little things. And these are things that you put on the coffee table or the dining room table, and you just kind of look at stuff, right? And you go, oh, that's cool, that's cool. And it just introduces people to exactly this energy, this telluric energy. They're not talking about telluric energy. They are talking about the energy and the different ways that we communicate, and communicate, and we don't even recognize that's what we're doing, because it's just now basically old nature, right? It's just ancient memory that we have, and we don't even recognize we're doing it when we're doing it. I'm a little bit more than halfway through the 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 video. It's a how long is it? An hour. It's an hour and a half long. So I'm about halfway through it. I'll probably finish it before I go to bed today. But it was so interesting. I just and when I go off there and I take lessons, I take lessons from everybody, right? I am not particular in the culture, um, um, religious and spiritual ideas. I really normally don't delve too deep in them except to pick up a little bit in order to see the similarities or to be able to make a connection if the conversation should come up that I might be able to jump into the conversation and then maybe I'll be able to learn that way. But I'm non-denominational in my ideas because my ideas are meant to help us move into whatever the next stage of our evolution is. I really do believe, that we are in well, we're in serious transit right now, and it's been going on probably for thousands of years, but it is a slow process. I believe in baby steps, but I believe those other parts, right? Believe in baby steps too, and whoever or whatever has dictated that probably now's a good time, right? We're starting to better understand ourselves a little bit better now, um, and to better understand others. So maybe it makes it so that, right, we'll maybe get some of those answers or at least have some of those conversations so that we could have a better understanding of what's in store, right, for us. What's in store for me? I'm not somebody who likes to kind of bumble along blindly. Most highly sensitives and empaths, they don't. We like to be a few steps ahead of the game. We like to be comfortable and knowledgeable in the decisions that we make. I mean, we'll ride those waves, we'll adapt and conquer because we never give up. We crash, we do crash, but we'll do everything we can to stay above water. But that's only in that hypervigilance of wanting to know what's coming, what's behind the corner, what's the next conversations, what's the next line of action, and in that little bit of hypervigilance, we don't really much have a choice sometimes. And because I'm just kind of bumbling along like everybody else, I have to be able to move in a way that makes me feel comfortable, that doesn't get my porcupines all standing up on end, that makes it so that I'm so stretched that all I'm going to do is just going to stand in the line of fire, right? And that doesn't happen as often as it used to. But I think also it's because I've got a few lessons along my belt, and I don't even know if it's a good thing or a bad thing because I do recognize sometimes that when we need to move, it needs to be uncomfortable. It's sometimes born out of desperation or or just a need, right? Even a want. But sometimes, most often, it is that push that we've got that puts us in a scary situation and we don't know if we're going to survive it, and you got no choice, right? You got to ride those waves. You got to adapt and conquer, and you just got to keep saying everything's going to be okay, right? And the next thing you know, the water is calm, right? Everything is back to normal. And you get a little bit of a break, right? You get to come up to the surface and take a gulp of air before you dive right back down into it. Okay, let me get these notifications out of here. And like I said, we're just going to pull a card, go into it for a couple of minutes. my week is over tomorrow. I am going to take the day off. I was thinking maybe tomorrow I might go live on Instagram. Right. If I could go and have somebody to chit chat with, I don't want to just go in and just chit chat on my own. I do this Monday to Friday here on my YouTube. On Instagram, I think, over the years I've gotten to know my audience, that maybe I'll be able to drum up one or two people that might want to come in and say hi, and we could just touch base that way. I haven't done one of those lives with other people for a long time. I used to enjoy it, but as you move along, you get to understand that when you talk to these people, lots of times when they're coming in, they are strangers, and when you are sensitive and empathic, right? You just strangers are just not an ingredient you want to throw into the mix, because we're feeling them out. We're not very trusting in the moment. And, to go into something with a big smile when you're absolutely afraid, especially for me, uh, it's not a good thing, because I'm not a good liar. Number one, it's going to be recognized that I'm uncomfortable in the moment. And number two, it's going to show that I'm not genuine, because I'm purposely trying to be calm, and right when I'm really not calm at all. Hello, Eugene. How are you tonight? It's Friday. Brunswick Train Fan Farm Lover Videos. That is a long title that you got going on there. Oh, that's good. That's good to hear, Eugene. That's really good to hear. I had a really nice day too. I was telling everybody it was just a little mix of the indoors and the outdoors today. But it was really interesting when I came home that I got into a lesson. I was sitting in on a conversation between two guys who were sitting at a, I don't know, a desk or a kitchen table or something, with a couple of whiskeys and just having a conversation. And yeah, this one gentleman, he's a Dr. Yogi Hedlund. He's some kind of scientist, but he works with I guess biology or something, because he was talking about how we communicate with plants and animals. And right, and I believe that's true, right? Like the dog whisperer and the horse whisperer. My mother had a cat. When my mother died, my sisters didn't want to put the cat down. My mother always had problems with this cat. Every time I go visit my mother had scratches and dry blood all the way up her arms, all down her legs, and a couple of times when we go to visit her, you just hear her scream, and then she'd just be like throwing the cat across the living room when it was sitting on her lap, right? And I just like, oh my goodness, this is the worst cat ever. And this cat uh, had really short neck, I think it was, and was unable to clean itself properly. So its back end was like a big cake of poop. It was just not a nice cat. You couldn't even pet it, nothing. Best you could do is just say hello to it when you walked in the door. And she had this cat for years. It was an old cat. My mother passed away, and my sister says, Cindy, you got to take the cat. My cat had just died. I wasn't in the state of taking a cat. I did not want a cat, but my sisters were so devastated and broken over mom passing away, right? And for me, it was almost like just another day. And isn't that a terrible thing to say about a parent? But for me, that's how it was. It just felt like, well, it didn't even feel like another day. It just almost felt like a relief, almost, right? But I felt so bad for my sisters. And so I said, yes, I'll take the cat, right? And so, but I said, you have to get that cat's bum cleaned. And so they took the cat to the vet and got it checked out and got its veins. They gave it a haircut, shaved its butt, put it in a cat cage, and they brought it over to my house with some cat supplies. And that very same night, that cat let me pick him up, walk around the apartment, fell asleep in my arms, purring. That cat wouldn't even let me touch it, right? And here it was. It was such a relief for that cat, I do believe, that it had been out of that, right? It just didn't rub well with my mom, right? Whatever reason that my mom had those scratches all up and down her legs, that cat never bit me, never scratched me once in all the years I had it. Yes, I had that cat for years. I loved that cat. And I tell you, I didn't love it when I first said that I would take that cat. I was actually pretty scared about what it was going to do to me, in all honesty. So you never know, right? And it's about taking that time to kind of communicate, right? In your own way, in those feelings that we have, in those tender care of our plants when we're in the garden, or when we come across worms and beetles and stuff, and they're about to get macheted by a hoe or something, and you take that care to go take it to another part of the yard, right? Those times when we go to sit under a tree with a good book, right? At the same time we're sitting there with that book, that that piece of mother nature that we're now sitting on and up against and amongst is filling us up. And here's a scientist here right now. He's not hooey fooey. He's not in the back of a what are those wood caravans selling, what did they call that? Witch oil? Is that what they called it? No, what did they call it? I can't remember what it was called. But they made so much money on that stuff, right? It was just all marketing. You could fill up a bottle with any kind of fluid that you wanted, right? If you were good with words, slap that label on and go to town selling. And being a bottle digger, I've come across those bottles all the time when I'm out there digging. There were some of my favorite bottles to dig up. Okay, you guys, it's Friday. Let's pull a card. Just a couple of minutes. First, first perspective in that. And it's this card that's sitting right here. Isn't that funny? So I'm going to tie it up with this little conversation about telluric energy and biosemiotics. These big words. I'm not a science person, but I'm hanging out with the number guys and the medical guys and the science guys. Not too much, right? But enough, because I do find it interesting when I'm gobbling it up and I'm understanding it, even though they are so smart in their intellect and how they're, right, having their own conversations with each other, that, right, that maybe I have sat in a couple of lessons or a couple of conversations that with myself, that it made it so it's a little bit easier for me to understand. It's pretty cool. Okay, so this idea of grace. Grace in that terminology. First, let's read it what it is. Grace swoops in to make the impossible possible. Oh my goodness. Sometimes I just impress myself with that one. I wrote that one down. So grace snoops in to make the impossible possible. So we're going to just tell a quick little story. Some of you may have heard this story before. Maybe not. I don't know. But the story of grace. Grace is miracles, something that happens that is just totally amazing, so dazzle and amaze and unbelievable that you have no other choice but to attribute it to a miracle. So I'm going to tell you a miracle, and we're going to associate it with the Mother Nature and in that idea of how we communicate, right? And how we do it sometimes without even noticing. My sister used to do lots of kindnesses for me. And in my little drummer girl kind of way, I would try to want to give back to her in some way. And that was like cleaning her house, making dinner, right? Doing little projects around the house, do the garden, clean the backyard, right? Whatever it was needed to be done, I would want to pay back the kindnesses by doing kindnesses back for her. I'm out in the garden one day and I'm piddling around, and I just got there and I look over, and this pond my brother-in-law had built was a big pond that was about 4 or 5 feet off the ground, and it was probably about 10 feet by 4 feet in width. And the top pond spilled in like with a little waterfall into a creek bed. And then the creek kind of ran around the yard a little bit. And then that fell into the big pond in the bottom. And then the sump pump would pick it up and take it into the big pond again. And I would often go into the garden. I just kind of scoop up the leaves, any leaves that fell from the trees in the into the big pond, so it wouldn't clog up the pump. And let me have a sip of my juice here. And I looked into the pond, and there was this little white moth, and the sump pump had made it so it was like a whirlpool where it was like going back down so it could go into the waterfall and back into the creek, right? And so this moth was going around and around and around, and every once in a while it get out maybe 6 inches outside of that whirl, right? And and it would get sucked right back into it, and it would be fighting for its life again. I tried to reach over, but it was 4 feet and I couldn't get to the moth. And I didn't know what to do. It was just ruining my gardening. I used to love to go to her house and just go out to the garden and be with Mother Nature and hang out outside and get a suntan. And I loved it. But I couldn't do my work in the garden looking at that moth that was going round and around and around, and I knew it was going to die. I didn't know what to do. There was a little twig. There was lots of little twigs, but there was a little twig. It was about this big. I grabbed this twig, and I don't know what was in my head because this whirlpool was like 3 feet away from my arm, and this thing, I'd been watching it for 15 minutes and had never been able to get out past that that little whirl by more than 6 inches. And I tapped the water by the edge of the rocks because it was a rock pond. And I tapped it and I go, come here, like I was calling a cat, come here. And I'm scooping the water and stuff. And I swear to God, this moth gave it everything it had, and it swam within 5 seconds, 6 seconds, 3 feet towards my stick, and it tried to stick to my little twig, like it was no bigger, no thicker than a pencil. And I'm shaking this like I'm freaking out. I'm just in shock that it actually came to me when I called it, that I'm trying to scoop it up with this stick, right? And finally, it stuck to the stick, and I was just in shock. And I brought it up to my face, and I'm holding it underneath here. and I bent down because it was a pond, that I came down and I put it in the sun. The sun was directly on the rocks, and I put it in between two rocks. Came on, I just left the stick there, and it just sat there. I went to gardening. I was so proud of myself that I had saved this moth, and I just left it there so it could dry. I went back to gardening. Every once in a while, I would get up and I would come and check on it, and it was underneath the rock. And then after about a half an hour, it came out on top of the rock and kind of fluttered its wings a little bit. And oh, thank God I didn't destroy its wings. And the next thing you knew, it flew into the branches right above my head. I was so proud of myself. I had saved. It was a miracle. I had saved this little white moth, right? It was just a moth, but I was so proud of myself. And I went back to my gardening. And again, every once in a while, I didn't have to get up. I could just look up and I could see it was sitting because the green leaf had just stood right out. And I could just see it was just basking there. After about another 20 minutes or so, I grabbed my pail and my little scooper and stuff and my gloves, and just went over to the tree and looked up at the tree one more time, right? Again, just having that experience of this little miracle that I had had with this moth. In that moment of looking up at that moth flew directly to my cheek, touched my cheek, and went. That was the miracle for me. That was right. The grace was the miracle of the moth that I had saved, right? But the gift, there was a gift in that, right? Because I had saved it. There was no reason this moth had not moved in the past hour, right? Since I put it in the rock, except to get on the rock and then to get up into the tree. It was just so obvious, and it just flew away, right? It just came to my cheek and it just gave me a little, oh, thank you so much. And then off it was gone. And in that moment, my heart just burst because I got it. I understood it. It was just a moth. It was just an experience with Mother Nature. And yet there was something there, right? There was an experience, an interaction, and some communication in that. That's pretty amazing that we got this word grace, and how I was just talking about that telluric energy and about this biosemiotics. It'll take me a while. I'll know it'll come across my path now a few times this week, I'm sure. And I'll learn a little bit more by it. But like I said, I'm only halfway through this lesson. I'm gonna finish it up. And it's funny to say that it's a lesson, but anything that mirrors back to me something that I believe to be a truth, and it compounds that, that's so amazing. That is something that I truly do appreciate it, because, if I go back into the history of my life, any compounding of recognition of that is true was only in the bullying, right? The one who is giving it to me, and then somebody comes in and backs them up, right? That's the only experience that I've ever had with that. But to have something so amazing mirrored back to me in my own life, that's right. It becomes a perspective, not this fast. It'll take a few more lessons, but it's got me curious, right? It's got me curious. Okay, you guys, we got that word grace. So let me read it again because it's so good. Grace swoops in to make the impossible possible, right? That moth, it was almost impossible. That moth was not meant to survive that that whirlpool. It wasn't strong enough. And I have no idea how it was fighting the current or how long it had been fighting the current. But in the end, we saved it. And I don't know what the lifespan of a moth is. I'm sure it's not very long. But if he even got the rest of its evening just in reflection to appreciate how close it got to not being in this amazing world that we live in, right? Okay, you guys. That's my good cheer. We'll see you on Monday. If you want to kind of pop in on Sunday night, we do Chatters Live on Sunday night. The most amazing crew. They have been with me for years. Eugene is now, right, one of our members. Remind me, Eugene, on Sunday we're gonna slap that moderator on you too, right? That's just the way it goes when you kind of hang out with me for a while. You get that badge. Yeah, just be sure to check out the ruffians. They don't happen very often. They have happened on my live, and they've had to be booted. But for the most part, I don't really have those kind of characters come and hang out with me. They are truly an amazing crew, very kind hearted. So if you want to come in on Sunday night, hang out with us. It's a good time. We go for an hour and a half. I'll be there 7:30 Centrals or thereabouts. And it's always a good time, you guys. So pop in. If you want to say hi, come in and say hi. If you just want to stay in the background, right? For the first couple of times that you come into that show, right? That's fine. That's fine too. Okay, you guys. Thank you, Eugene, for popping into my live tonight. For anybody who pops in later, I hope your week is going well. If you're a Monday to Friday, you guys, it's Friday. You got the weekend, right? Do something nice for yourself. Do something nice for the people that you care about. Okay, you guys.